internal code work that we use for the next generation thing. We are a company of over 1,000 people, and that means that we have the resources to put on teams, and when we want to really power through something, we can throw a lot of people on the team and really put a lot of content in very quickly. We also have a lot of tools and pipelines that enable us to do things that a lot of other companies can't, because we're at 9 MMOs right now. So that's something that nobody else in the world can say. But the number one thing that we have is experienced people. And the people here today are some of the most experienced people in our entire company. So I'd like to take this opportunity to introduce some folks. And I'm going to start with Clint Worley and let him introduce some members of his team. Clint Worley is a producer on the next generation of EverQuest. And he's been with our company now, I want to say, what, 12 years, Clint? 15 years. He was literally came into our company as an 18-year-old tester. And he's been with us for a long time now. He was a producer on EverQuest Live for quite a while, and one of the most experienced producers in our company. Clint, I'll give you the opportunity to introduce you.
Morning, everyone. So I brought a few people from my team to kind of just talk about what we've got going on and hear what you guys said, some of your ideas. So to my right, this is Rosie Rappaport. I'll let you kind of introduce.
Well, I've also been with the company a long time, probably a little bit less than Clint. I was the original art director of EverQuest, and I was also EverQuest 2 and art director of Faire.
This is Ryan Parker.
Hey guys, yeah, I've been with the company. I'm the newbie apparently in the group. I've only been here for 9 years. I've got a lot to learn. But I was on EQ for almost all that time. I started out as a customer service way back in the day, and designer, and was for a little while, and now I'm on the new project. So.
And then we have Kevin McCann down our side.
Hi there, guys. I'm Kevin McCann, as you said, the creative director on EverQuest Next. And I've also been with the company a long time, again, not as long as Clint, but back in the day, my first game I worked on for John was actually as a lead designer on a game called Tannerus, if any of you know that one. And from there, actually I was the creative director and lead designer on Planet Side. And I've also recently worked on Free Realms and a bit of Clone Wars before actually coming on board at EverQuest Next as the creative director.
So thanks, folks. As you can hear, we've got some experienced people, but I mean, this is just the tip of the iceberg. I mean, this team is populated with literally veterans from EverQuest 1, EverQuest 2, Free Realms, just about every game inside our company, because one of the things at SOE with the diversity of games that we have, that also means that we get a diversity of experiences. We also, one important thing about SOE that kind of distinguishes us from many other companies, we have a company that's populated by people, many of which kind of rose up through the ranks. And they rose up through the ranks from different places. I mentioned that Clint actually started in QA. Ryan was in customer service. A lot of our designers and our employees come from either customer service or QA. So they hear the voice of the players a lot, and they bring that experience with them. And you know, when it comes to making games, they put the players first. So with all that being said, we're going to start. What you're going to see a lot of today is there's a lot of concept art that you're going to see. If you're expecting to see any live gameplay, you won't. That's coming later, and largely it's going to come as a response from hearing your ideas. So you'll see some cool screenshots. You'll see some different ideas of potential sets of wearables on these NPCs, and in some cases I think there's NPCs in there too. But you can kind of see the direction that Rosie has chosen. Rosie, I don't know if you can see very well. Okay. So I'd like to let Rosie talk about the art style that we're going with.
Well, we're looking for a very distinctive style that is going to be unique to EverQuest Next. It's going to be we're not looking at the photorealism. We want to do something a little bit more stylized.
can switch places with you if you need.
Oh, no, that's okay. You want me to talk about each of these? Another thing you can see here from the null, or not, sorry, not the null, the ghoul, is that we're looking heavily at original EQ style for the NPCs and PCs. We're not talking about the blockiness, obviously. We're going to be more of a next-gen game. But we want to capture the charm and the original intention, what we could have done if we had the technology that we have today. So we can really kind of let ourselves go free. And with the player characters,
That's a screenshot of it.
that is each player character, the intent is that they have a lot of inherent power, whether it's power, physical power, sexual power, whatever kind of power would be appropriate to them in particular. They'll all be varied, obviously. This is the orc. The orc is obviously ready to kill. Lots of detail on the armor. This is the kobold is also coming from the original design of the kobold, African wild dog look. Again, the idea of just a general quality of being very badass, very powerful. You want to feel powerful in this game, so you want to go into the game and battle with even more powerful things. So everything has to be really over the top.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I wanted to add is because we have EverQuest, EverQuest 2, they're developed in San Diego. We're in San Diego as well. We've got two huge teams with a wealth of experience, all the lore that's there, concept art. Obviously we have access to the game. We play the game. So when we're making NPCs and we're looking at player characters and things like that, we're literally like bringing up an NPC from EverQuest 1, we're bringing up an EverQuest 2, and kind of looking at how it's evolved, and then trying to figure out, what does that mean for EverQuest next, and how do we want to put our twist on it? So we're definitely using NPCs. The goal is for it to feel familiar, but to have its own look and feel.
So the core concepts of EverQuest, very particularly things like grouping together and adventuring together, are still at the center of EverQuest Next. I'd like to ask Kevin here to give you an idea of sort of where we're going with the design. Again, we're going to be very light on particulars here, not because we don't have them, but because after we are done with some of the initial talk, we really want to hear your feedback on it. That's the whole point of this.
Right. One of the things we're doing with EverQuest Next is it's really not before or after EverQuest 1 or EverQuest 2. It's a reimagining. In a sense, you want to take that as being like the new Star Trek movie was. It was faithful to the original series, but it changed its own rules. So some events will change, etc. Barker's been working quite a bit on the lore. He's our lore historian. But the main thing is we're still remaining very faithful to the actual EverQuest universe. We're not getting rid of all the characters. We're not changing locations. It's all still there. It's just going to be like a reimagining we're going for. It gives us a lot more freedom in how we want to present this. Beyond that, John mentioned we're still focusing heavily on grouping, adventuring together. We're working on actually making the combat more engaging as an actual experience for the players. And beyond that, we're also really working on having how we present the storyline to the players, making it tighter, making it more accessible, and how we guide the player through the game in that manner as well. And we really want to make sure that, it's not like it's a bit of a challenge for us because we know like when people get those quests and they get walls with text to read, not everybody reads it. So we're kind of balancing how much text we're going to show, but how we want to actually still tell the story. But with this technology, we can do a lot more cinematic aspects to the game. So that's really going to help us out there. But as John said, it's more of a suggestion form actually right now. So I really want to kind of be a little bit light on cementing anything. But
Ryan, you have anything you want to add on the board?
I can just kind of echo what Kevin said. We're definitely going to try to take the familiar pieces of EQ1 and EQ2 and, hopefully merge them into something greater and, have that familiarity you'll see a lot of locations and stuff that are very familiar but maybe some of them changed a little bit along the way, different things played out. I'm sure, like you said about the Star Trek movie, or maybe you have read like the Ultimate X-Men series, that kind of a take on the characters are familiar, but the history played out in a very different manner. That's sort of the general sense of what we're going for. That's about all I have.
The key thing here is that we're not, when you come into this game, we want to radically change the MMO, but not in a way that you're going, oh my God, this combat is like it is in DC or something. It's nothing like that. We understand EverQuest at its core and what it is. We also understand the differences between EverQuest 1 and 2, which are pretty profound. And I would say that we're probably looking more towards EverQuest 1 for its basis, particularly in its lore and the kind of feeling that we want you to have when you're playing it, of excitement and discovery. I realize discovery in a 12-year-old game is probably a pretty odd concept, because most of you that are EverQuest players literally know every inch of the game, probably better than we do. But that's but that sense of discovery that you first felt when you went into the world, that's what we want. We don't want go into the world and you've explored every inch of it by the end of that day kind of thing. So it's a whole different tone that we're taking with it. So I would really like to take this opportunity. This is the kind of the meat of what we're talking about. By the way, tomorrow if you come, there'll be some different pictures in there as well. So what we're here to ask you to do is literally, we just want to go around. We want to go around the room. We want to hear from people what EverQuest means to them, or EverQuest 2 means to them, and what you'd like to see in the next generation game, or maybe what you wouldn't like to see. And Tony, you're going to do that?
So
we'll let Tony choose.
Well, it's very selective. I'm going to judge. And you're first. Don't ask any questions about WoW.
How you doing, guys? I'll probably disagree with most people in this room, but what I'd like to see is more of a check where you can't have an 100-hour Uber. I'd like to see something where you have to round out your characters. Mandatory raise to 25, mandatory raise to 50, maybe a mandatory language count. Just something to slow you down, make you round out your tune, where when you're raiding at 90, you can't do it with 90 AA. You got to do something to get those AAs up before you get there, that kind of thing.
Can anyone guess what zone that screenshot and concept art that we had up earlier is? Yeah, that's it. Right.
Hi, I've played EQ1 and EQ2 pretty much at the length, and got to experience the pros and the concepts. If you were going to do another game, one of the things that for me really frustrated me on EQ2 that I'd like to not see in the next game is that there was way too many classes and not enough spots on the raid. If I could snap my fingers and make EQ2 just the base classes out of EQ1, it would work so much better, because the combat system was awesome, it was engaging, it was fun to play, but it just had way too many classes where, you were having to decide, do I bring the Mystic or the Defiler? Why? Just make him a shaman and have 2 trees that he can swap back and forth, so if that's him, he goes and swaps his tree. It was forcing people that had now enjoyed it and put all that time into their character of the Mystic, and, I don't need the Mystic on the raid, we want 2 Defilers. It just seems kind of ridiculous. So bring it back to basics on the classes, and I think you're going to have a lot more flexibility in playtime.
We're an MMO, we want to make it extremely complicated.
Kevin has a comment on that.
It's part of our job to confuse people. Tony,
Kevin has a...
to respond to that actually last comment, you actually will be pretty happy with the direction we are taking with the classes. So.
Thank you.
I'm an old EQ player. I dabble a little bit in EQ2, and I've dabbled in a few other games which will remain nameless.
One of the features that I've seen in one of those other games that seemed to really make for grouping, rating, etc., was the ability for a class or character to transfer to another server, temporarily grab up a group. It really made for LFG nice. The other thing, EQ2, you forgot my Beast Lord, so I'm not going back there. But the trade skills in EQ drive me nuts. I would like to see something a little more toned down, a little more accessible, a little more easier to do, not boring hours of sitting and right-clicking.
You said
Are
EQ.
you talking about basically the random dungeon finder kind of feature from WoW?
No, it was Dungeons and Dragons. Actually, you could be on this server, you couldn't find a third. You could be on server X and you couldn't find 6 people, but together you could group people from another server and pull them all in together.
I didn't have enough money to play on DDO, sorry, but.
I didn't stay with it. I'm back to my EQ, but. Yeah.
Hey, how you going? Spindle for maybe here. First of all, I just want to go through and actually say thank you guys for all the time and effort you guys have been putting into EQ. We've had a lot of fun with this. You guys have done a fantastic job. Many hours of enjoying everything. Personally, what I'd like to see is basically, I would like to see something that actually has a lot of emotional involvement. I mean, basically, one of the things about EverQuest for me is basically not just going through and actually just grinding AA for 1 or 2% of my casting speed. Basically, I want my character to be able to go through and actually say, do something like really, really cool. I mean, basically, I'm a long-time EQ player, and I'm also a long-time EQ2 player. And one of my favorite things from EQ was basically when the Froglocks actually took over Grob and turned it into Gupta. That sort of thing is basically, I mean, you can look back on the sort of thing and actually say, like, wow, that's fantastic. I mean, basically, it's like, you're not going to remember, basically, you got 1 or 2 points percent on A. You're going to remember that time in which basically, that you saw the Froglocks screaming out of the swamp, basically taking over and like chopping up the trolls and everything like that. That's the sort of thing that basically makes EverQuest like really, really cool. And just like one more minor thing, basically, please keep Ratunga. They rock. Thank you very much, guys.
Going back.
Basically, kind of the opposite of that one guy up there. I make most of my flat off trade skilling. I enjoy the trade skilling part just because I'm more of a solo guy. I'm auto-confined quest, so you guys, when you nerf down the trade skilling, I kind of enjoy building a part, building another part, making the final product, just because it makes it work more. It means not anybody can come in and do it at any time in like 2 minutes. So I would like to keep the trade skilling back how it used to be.
How you doing? Player for 10 years here as well on EverQuest. I haven't played any other games because I just didn't want to go there. I wanted to stay in my own world. One thing that I like that I miss is the game's too easy. And moving around. You don't see the dynamic of it anymore. Druids lost their ability to port from place to place. I'm Paladin, I used to have to go look for somebody. Now, I know maybe people might not like this, but if you died in the zone, you just pop right back. No, I mean, the challenge of the game was getting your body back. You lost the skill. I mean, what was it to be invisible and run around a zone and try to not get killed? That took skill. Nowadays, people just train you through because they know if you die, you go right back. But the skill is gone. The skill of actually going through a world. I mean, if you're going to go through a giant forest and it's not good to be there at midnight, get the car. Go around. You don't want to just walk through. It's too easy. So just make the game a little bit more back to where it took a challenge to move, get around, and see the stuff. I don't get to see the game anymore. I don't know the last time I've been to the Piranhas. I can't tell you the last time I've been to the Piranhas. I haven't been to Grob. Those zones are dead. Go to the zones, go to the places where it took skill to play. Anymore? Can't do that anymore. Thanks, guys.
Do you have plans to include player versus player combat in the original game?
Oh, yes.